Christians be pacifists? You know, that wouldn't really even be much of a question based on two Bible verses that seem to settle the whole matter. And it's really just two verses. So we're going to take a look at those two verses, and then we're going to look at all the multitude of evidence that suggests that those two verses might not necessarily be being interpreted correctly. Either that or they may have been mistranslated. So anyway, let's take a look here. Matthew 5:38. Here it is. You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. Now let's look at what it says. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Now doesn't that imply payback? Somebody takes your eye and then you get back at him by taking their eye too. Tooth, tooth, eye, thigh, thigh. I think it's talking about payback here. It's talking about revenge. Think about it. If it weren't, why would he have even inserted that sentence? And indeed, I found a couple of translations, and they're the minority big time. I only found two of them, but I'll read them here. Contemporary English Version. But I tell you not to try to get even with the person who has done something to you. When someone slaps you on your right cheek, turn and let them slap the other cheek too. And there's the Good News translation. But now I tell you, do not take revenge on someone who wrongs you. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, let him slap you on your left cheek too. So that reasoning seems to be pretty compelling to me. Now, this quote is found in two of the Gospels, Matthew and Luke. So next we're going to look at the one in Luke, and you'll see that even has a little more nuanced meaning that's a little different. So now this one in Luke takes the same quote, basically, more or less, and it ascribes to it a slightly different meaning. And I'll tell you what I'm talking about. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you, and pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. Now, it sounds to me here like he's talking about giving, being a giving person, having a giving attitude, seems to me. And so in this case, I think he's using the turn the other cheek sentence as a metaphor for being a giving person. And it seems re ipsa loquitur, seems obvious. Oh, and also, you know, it has a different meaning than the one in Matthew. It's the same quote with different words having a different meaning. That's interesting. Those of you out there who say that the Bible never contradicts itself are, I don't know, I think you're walking on thin ice when you say that. I don't think you can really justify that position. But anyway, now let's look at all the evidence that suggests that you should not be a pacifist. Evidence that suggests that to be a pacifist is actually an immoral thing. Okay.
The first thing to bracket this conversation with is an acknowledgement that pacifism, you know, as much as it seems to have real spiritual bona fides, is not an ethical position that is easy to defend. I mean, when Gandhi was asked, I mean, Orwell wrote about this quite sneeringly. When Gandhi was asked, you know, what the Jews of Europe should do in the face of the Third Reich, he said that they should have, you know, walked willingly into the gas chambers so as to arouse the rest of the world to the, you know, to arouse the conscience of the rest of the world. But that demands the follow-up question, which is, what is the rest of the world to do with their aroused consciences if they're also pacifists, right? I mean, what pacifism is a willingness to let the thugs inherit the earth, right? If you're willing to let your wife and children be raped and decapitated in front of your eyes, and you're not going to lift a finger to protect them because you're a pacifist, yes, maybe you have not got your hands dirty on one level, but you represent a kind of ethical singularity on another, and that's an event horizon no one should want to disappear.
Now let's look at a story from Acts and something that happened to Paul vis-a-vis the Sanhedrin and the Jews in the area. And I'll just read it here. Acts 23:12 through 23. The next morning, some Jews formed a conspiracy and bound themselves with an oath not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. More than 40 men were involved in this plot. They went to the chief priests and the elders and said, "We have taken a solemn oath not to eat anything until we have killed Paul. Now then, you and the Sanhedrin petition the commander to bring him before you on the pretext of wanting more accurate information about his case. We are ready to kill him before he gets there." Okay, so Paul found out about this. Now, if you don't remember, Paul was a Roman citizen, and that was a big deal back then in the Roman Empire. Not everybody got to be a citizen. Not even people in Italy got to be citizens automatically. You had to do something to rate that, to merit that. You had to serve in a legion for 30 or 40 years before you could be a citizen on the other end, and most guys didn't survive to be retired as legionaries. So anyway, Paul, he goes to the Roman, commander, governor in the area, and he says, "Hey, man, these guys are going to kill me." And the governor, he goes, "Oh, hell, we're going to stop this shit." So then he called two of his centurions and ordered them, "Get ready a detachment of 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearmen, and go to Caesarea at 9 tonight. Provide horses for Paul so that he may take him safely to Governor Felix." So here's Paul, and he gets a bunch of Roman soldiers to protect him. Now, do you think those Roman soldiers for 1 second would hesitate to kill anybody who fucked with Paul? Do you really think so? Look through history. These guys were some steely-eyed killers, Roman centurions were. We would not believe the atrocities and the barbarity, the cruelty they inflicted all over the civilized world in Europe. Do you really think that Paul didn't realize that there would be the potential for some violence, and yet he did it? That doesn't sound like pacifism to me. So that seems to me being a pretty compelling lesson to be learned from this story, and it gets even better as we continue. So we have Luke 22:35 through 38. Then Jesus asked them, "When I sent you without purse, bag, or sandals, did you lack for anything?" "Nothing," he answered. He said to them then, "But now if you have a purse, take it, and also a bag. And if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one." The disciple said, "See, Lord, here are 2 swords." "That's enough," he replied. So that seems pretty obvious to me. I mean, he's sending them out to go hither and yon, and he's telling them to be armed while they're doing it, to defend themselves. What do you think they're going to do? Just take those swords out and wave them around in the air and hope that scares away the robbers and the bandits? Now, here is the best one. Matthew 21:12 through 13. Jesus entered the temple courts and drove out everyone buying and selling, including money changers and dove sellers. He overturned their tables and benches, saying, "It is written, my house will be called a house of prayers, but you are making it a den of robbers." Now, essentially, these money changers were bankers, basically, the equivalent of bankers back then. People came from all over the empire to make sacrifice at the temple, and they had their own money, but they had to pay for it in Jewish money, so they had to have some kind of a currency exchange, and these guys were ripping people off. And, Jesus, he didn't like that. he made a whip, and he beat the shit out of those guys. Now, I have actually heard Holy Joes telling me that he made the whip, but he didn't really hit anyone. Do you really believe that? Does anyone really believe that? It only shows the hoops that the preachers will go through, to jump through, to make a square peg fit in a round hole. So, the Bible mentions several military men becoming Christians, yet they were never told to cease their vocation. So, in other words, I think there's a guy named Cornelius, a centurion, and then there was, but anyway, they became Christians, and no one ever told them, at least it's not stated that anyone ever told them to stop being soldiers. And then also there's, in one of his letters, I believe it was Paul, someone wrote about Christians serving in the Roman army. So if they're in the army and they're Christians, then ipso facto, it's possible to be a soldier, or I suppose a police officer, what have you, and be a Christian. Seems to me. But don't just take my word for all this stuff. Be careful who you listen to. Yeah, go ahead and listen to the Holy Joes, but check out what they say. Test it. Learn for yourself. You have a mind. You don't need some priest to tell you what's right or wrong, or to choose which sins you're going to be forgiven of and which not. Don't take my word for it. Don't take their word for it. Trust yourself. The Bible says that the laws of God are already written on your heart. So think about it. So it seems to me that using self-defense is good. Coming to the defense of others and the weak. Augustine, he came up with the concept of a just war. Augustine was a patrician and an uppity-up, but I think he was right about that. Just wars can be just if they're done defensively. I think all this talk of pacifism is a lie from the pit of hell to keep you on the couch and to give the devil a free reign in the world. Oh yeah, lay back, don't worry, it's pacifist. Master Jeebus gonna come rapture you. No, I don't think that's right. I think you should go out and engage the devil every day, any way you can. Me, I'm an old man. My health's not too good, so I make videos about this and that. I cuss a lot, so what? I did a video on cussing too. But this video isn't about me. It's about pacifism. And I think you see my point.